Hello, welcome. Nice to be here. Nice to see so many new people. There's over 1,100 people who signed up for this. This is very exciting. We entitled this webinar, "Help, the Third Dimension is Going Away, Time's Collapsing and the Sky's Falling." Well, the sky part falling, that's really not true. But everything else is true. And so what I'd like to do, because there are so many new people that are beginning to become aware much more consciously of this shift that's going on, these changes that are going on. There's something internal in everybody on the planet that is kind of waking up, beginning to have a different focus, a different set of choices are beginning to be apparent. And yet we're not sure what to do with what's going on because it's starting to feel different, but yet the world around you seems to be the same in many ways. So although some of you have heard me talk about this third dimensional space and time, treat this as a refresher because I'm going to bring it even into more present time. But for those of you who haven't necessarily heard this, these changes that are going on around you are very real. And what I watch is people don't have references for what is going on. It's not certain how to distinguish it, how to define it, and then how to move around with it without it being a problem. So once you have a tendency to know how something works, the fear is removed, the doubt is removed, and even though it may not be the most comfortable set of circumstances, whatever that new thing is, at least you have a good frame of reference for why certain things happen and how they happen. So let me start by talking about these dimensions, this concept of dimension that is heard and not defined very well. But a dimension is, we're going to talk about the third, fourth, and fifth dimension. And to keep it simple, let's just consider each one of those a box. And each one of those boxes has specific structures and rules and aspects to it that allow you to move around in that particular box. Being very simple, you do certain things in your kitchen that you don't do in your bedroom or your bathroom or your garage, and vice versa. Same thing happens in these dimensions. But these dimensions are such that you are currently living in a third and fourth dimensional space, and now very much a fifth dimensional space is being available. But pretty much your knowledge, your awareness, your ability to move in and out of your experiences is done in both a third and a fourth dimension. So let me just define the structure of this third dimension because it is different than the structure of the fourth dimension. In the third dimension, it's very dense, it's very rigid. We find that we experience ourselves in words like always and never, very unforgiving words, no flexibility in those words. There is a time construction in the third dimension that is what we generally know as linear time, past, present, future, and then you die. The third dimension is conditional. There is nothing unconditional in the third dimension. It's structured in such a way that as you play, let's take this timepiece, in the time consideration, one of the things that happens is you spend far more time in the past and the future. Very little time is spent in the present time. And to a great extent, the reason that is structured that way is because the emotions you have in your body are magnetic and your thoughts are electrical. Just kind of put that aside, but keep that in your awareness. What happens is as we grow up, many of us have been told by the mom, dad, teacher, ministers of life who love us, who adore us, who appreciate us. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt there. And they want the best for us. But that best is on their terms, very conditional. And what I mean by that is that mom, dad, teacher, minister, and life say, in this house, this is how we do this. And this is the schools we go to, and these are the people we hang out with, and we go over here, but we don't go over there. And one of the factors in this reality that we spend a lot of time in is the need to make everybody safe. And so this concept of safety is such that you really don't teach safety to a great extent. What we teach is fear. Watch out for that. Don't go over there. Don't talk to these people, etc. Also in this third dimensional space, one of the things that happens is in the process of how we experience ourselves, many times it's not that we are told how good we are, it's we're told how bad we are. It's like, why did you miss? You got a 99 on your test. Why did you miss one? Rather than, wow, 99, that's great. Now, that doesn't apply to everybody, of course, but to a great extent, as you kind of watch people, one of the things that many of us have been given in this game is we are told that we're not good enough. We're not smart enough. We're not doing it right. How come you don't understand it? You're never going to succeed, etc. And to a great extent, that conditioning gets put in our space, and we're told that if we do it this way, in the future, you will be successful. But to a great extent, what many of us experience is, I didn't like what happened to me in my past. I hope it doesn't happen to me again in my future. And so we walk around with this baggage in a way that simply says, I'm not good enough, I'm not attractive, I don't fit, I'm not going to succeed. We wind up having that experience as we are trying to figure ourselves out as teenagers, and how many times have we embarrassed ourselves or said the wrong thing or been laughed at by somebody else. The interesting part of that experience is that it only took 1 or 2 seconds, 5 seconds, to have an experience that was embarrassing or humiliating, or you created a sense of doubt about yourself. You simply said something that may have been absolutely brilliant, but because those around you didn't understand it or think it, they would laugh at you as a matter of consideration. It's in that experience that many of us simply stopped going forward and begin to doubt ourselves. What makes that interesting in the third dimensional space is thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic. So what I mean by that is, as you think a thought, there is an electrical charge that's created. And when you have an emotion, there's a magnetic field that gets created. And so let me give you an example. You know those large junkyard cranes, those big cranes that pick up buses and cars and move them? They have a long chain and a big magnet on the end of it. And that magnet, that block of steel, when it starts out, is simply a block of steel. But in order to make it a magnet, you take an electrical wire and you wrap it around it one time, and then you plug it in. And when you plug it in, it creates an electromagnetic field. The block of steel is not a magnet by itself, but it has magnetic properties. And when the electricity is brought into it, it creates this weak electromagnetic structure. If you were to wrap that wire, though, 5 times, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, you create a very powerful magnet in that block of steel. What we do in our daily experience in this third dimensional space, many, not all, clearly, but what happens is let's say let me add one more piece. You have 4 bodies. You have this spiritual body, a mental body, emotional body, physical body, which you understand. But what happens is, let's say you're walking along the street and you're in a great space. You're in your spiritual space. Everything is in well-being. You're happy. And somebody says something to you that is off-balancing. They simply say to you, you have a funny nose. And the process, the mechanics is you simply are somewhat startled by that, and you drop out of your state of ease in that spiritual space, and you more or less just drop down into your mental body, and you have a thought, why did they say that? Or something to that effect. And you step into a space, mental body, of dis-ease. I'm in dis-ease, just knocked out of balance. But very immediately that thought attracts a emotion. That doesn't feel very good. And then you say, why did they say that? It doesn't feel very good. And then you begin to take that thought and you begin to wrap it around that emotion. Does this mean I'm not attractive, I'm not liked, I'm not going to be received by people, I'm not acceptable, something's wrong with me? You know that place I'm talking. And the more you think the thought and wrap it around that emotion, the more tight it begins to be. It starts to create the same electromagnetic field as in that junkyard crane. And you begin to hold on to it. And it's interesting because you've got it and you're holding on to it and it doesn't feel very good and you're wondering, why did they say that? And then you're carrying it around and it's very conscious to you and it doesn't feel very good. And so you try to figure out what to do with it, and you go to your best friend and your best friend says, what's going on? And you say, well, this person told me I had a funny nose. And your best friend kind of smiles and says, they were right. You have a funny nose. And then what do you do with that? Because now there's no place to kind of talk it through, make light of it, get rid of it, validate that it was wrong. Now you've got your best friend in agreement with it. She doesn't know what impact it has on you. They were just making a response. So what we do is we take that emotion and we kind of put it over here on the side in a place called denial. And now it's gone, kinda. It still catches your attention. And then we make another decision. We simply kind of have this quiet discussion with it. And we say, if you never come out into the light of day again, I'll never go anywhere near that person who told me I had a funny nose or anybody else like them. And so you create a limitation. But what happens is you take that concept, funny nose, and the pain and the emotional magnetic field, and you stick it behind you, in a manner of speaking, into unconsciousness. You just decide you're going to forget about it. But does it go away? No. One of the things that people don't have ever even really asked themselves is, where does the thought that you just thought go when you're done thinking that thought? In real terms, thoughts don't just go poof into the air and go away. They go somewhere. Every thought ever thought goes somewhere. So in this space, we're now walking around with this, I'm not okay, I have a funny nose, in very simple terms, or fill in your own blank. As you play in this third dimensional space, what happens is we begin to make a lot of unconscious constructions of ourself, beliefs, doubts, fears, wants, desires, but to a great extent they're fashioned in this structure called time. And so I didn't like it when they told me I have a funny nose, and so I take that thought and I say, I hope it never happens again in my future. And so in a way, we move our life between hopes and fears and worries. We simply say, they told me if I was going to be successful, I would do these things. And I didn't like this thing that happened. I hope it never happens to me again. So we have a tendency to look to the past to create our future. And we're constantly moving back and forth between what was yesterday and what will be tomorrow, past and future. But in reality, there also is in that third dimensional space a very thin slice of something called present time. And present time in the third dimension is reactionary. It's the place where you say, I hope this thing never happens to me again. And the next moment you step right into it, and there it is in different sizes, shapes, and colors. And you say, oh no, this wasn't supposed to happen. Right there, you're in present time, but you're in a reactionary state of present time. Anybody know what I'm talking about? So this third dimensional space is very conditional. It's very unforgiving. We have a tendency to look at people and say, well, she is never going to be a nice person. He is always going to be dishonest. And in that never and always space, we begin to categorize concepts into very rigid structure absolutes. And then we continue to move forward in our present time moment, because there only is present time. So this third dimensional box is something that kind of plays out like that. So let me go to the fourth dimensional box, because you live in that box too. In the fourth dimensional box, there is a number of things that are different. In the fourth dimension, you live in present time, now, in this moment, is fourth dimension. When you are in the present, you have something available to you that you do not have available to you in the third dimension. And that is the word choice. You see, when you play in that third dimensional box, and again, remember, you're in both of them. You're moving back and forth. The minute you go into present time, you have choice. The minute you are in reactionary state, past and future, there is no choice. There's reaction. Very fine line in a way, but it's an enormous difference between how you experience yourself in one state of consciousness versus another. In the fourth dimension, present time, you have choice. But there's another interesting word that comes into play, and that word is paradox. And what it simply means is what was true just a moment ago, she's always going to be bad, may not be true in this moment. If you look at somebody, as many do in that third dimensional space, and say, oh, when he was growing up, he was dishonest, you don't want to talk to him, even though that was 20 years ago. And so that difference is very subtle on one hand, very enormous on the other hand. And so these two states of consciousness are something that most of us just pass through without any particular definition. We just are what we are, and this is how we do it. But with that little bit of information, if you would start to begin to be conscious in the present moment, what you're going to find is many of the assumptions and the beliefs that then generate many of your habits and expressions are simply out of present time and even no longer relevant if they ever were in the first place. And so when you begin to be conscious in this fourth dimensional space, because in the third dimensional space, virtually everybody is unconscious of being unconscious. As you start to step into this fourth dimensional space, where many people are now beginning to be aware or conscious, sounds very funny. It's a huge step, but you're beginning to become conscious of being unconscious. Really big step. Sounds funny. But what happens is you start to ask the question, well, why am I doing this? Or this doesn't feel right. Or I'm starting to be aware, conscious of things that go on around me that don't feel in the best interest of the world. You know those places? Starting to look at the world financial markets, the world governments, the climate changes around the world. Something's going on, and that begins to be a feeling. So in this third dimensional box and fourth dimensional box, one of the key elements is time. As we go through this shift, that concept of time is not an absolute structure, as in the third dimension we just believe past, present, future, and then you die. That's all there is to it. But in real terms, when you start to perceive time in a fourth dimensional space, in present time, it's an application of creation. It is not a fixed dynamic that drives your life. When you begin to recognize that time is something that can be altered and changed, to keep that very simple, and utilized, it begins to change everything. But for the most part, that's not a concept that can be embellished or brought into most of our awarenesses. But the universe and the shift in consciousness that we're currently experiencing is very much aware of you, of each one of us. This grand shift, this great cycles of consciousness are all beginning to merge at a single integrated point right now. And that point is creating an opportunity for some very significant change. So keeping it very simple, the game has come to a conclusion. The third dimensional game has been extraordinarily successfully played out and very, very successful in terms of what it was designed to be. And it is no longer of value. Now, what I mean by that is one of the things that occurred in that third dimensional space was a word called contrast, and it applies in fourth and fifth also. But in the third dimensional space, it was designed in such a way that you experience various ranges of considerations and then choose how you'd like to experience them in a particular way. But as we kind of fell deeper into that third dimension, the word choice was replaced by fear. And in that third dimensional space, we began to not trust one another. We began to lie to one another. We began to defend from one another, etc. You know that story. In that place, we created lots of doubt. So the word choice, in terms of co-creation and cooperation and finding the most beautiful aspect of what was available, got replaced by words like right and wrong and good and bad and should and shouldn't. The third dimension became much more rigid. But now it is played out in all of its variations, and it is such that it's time to go home. It's time to step out of this experience. Kind of the larger consciousness is, I'm being very simple, kind of satisfied. Everything was accomplished. So right now, we're in a place where many are beginning to wake up. Many are beginning to become conscious. Many are beginning to say the way things are not in the best interest of all of us. This aspect of the third dimension that plays in domination and slavery and control and power and judgment, and a few have all and the many have very little, that's beginning to change. And it's beginning to change because there are so many now at this point in time, this shift, that are simply waking up. The third dimension is going away. Those aspects of fear are now beginning to be replaced by choice. and by new considerations. How many people simply look at things like the oil industries and the energy industries on the planet and say, you know, there should be a better way to do this than creating these imbalance. That's the awakening that's in fact going on within all of us. So as we begin to see this awakening, these new considerations are beginning to come into the consciousness of all of us. We begin to start to hold a little bit higher vibration. You begin to start to have an awareness of this fifth dimensional space. Just another box, keep it simple. But in the fifth dimensional box, there are words like appreciation and gratitude and co-creation and cooperation and beauty and dignity and etc. It's in those vibrations that if you just kind of think about it, which feeling feels better to you? Depression, anger, resentment, beauty, laughter, happy. It's in those higher, faster, more open vibrational frequencies that the fifth dimension exists. And in order to play in the fifth dimension, you cannot take your baggage with you on this journey. You can't take your angers and your resentments and your humiliations and your embarrassments and that stored away picture that says, I have a funny nose and everybody knows it. So this is where it gets very exciting, because the universe, the higher dimensional parts of you, basically understand this shift. And so a number of things are occurring in this shift. If I was to be very simple, there is tremendous waves of light coming forth. If you just have been paying attention in the last year, the amount of solar flares, coronal mass ejections, huge solar winds, charged particles, cosmic and X-rays from the center of the galaxy, and those coming from the sun. As these great bursts of light occur, something very interesting happens. It more or less, this new wave of light comes in, and it creates a new baseline. The next wave of light comes in, it simply builds on top of the last baseline. So there's this enormous loosening up of the density of that third dimension that's occurring. But in that space, let's just say there are two waves of light, to keep it simple. One of those waves of light is passing through the Earth, the solar system, everywhere, but most specifically, it's passing through you. And it knows that baggage, I have a funny nose and I'm embarrassed by it, and all of the other accumulated, I'm not smart, I'm not good, I'm not okays that we've accumulated, it simply knows that all of those expressions were never your expressions. You see, every one of your not okays that we walk around with, in absolute real terms, was someone outside of you saying to you, you have a funny nose. And even though it didn't feel good to you, we accepted that and then walked around with it, and then didn't like it and denied it, and then didn't like that and hid it away in our unconsciousness. But we accepted an external opinion of what and who we are. Those external opinions were from somebody was having a bad life one day, and they simply blurted out, and you said, okay. And it's like being given a pair of shoes or a coat that's too small, and then putting it on and walking around with it, because after all, it came from my mom, dad, teacher, minister in life, and they loved me. Take a breath. There are no bad people, and let's assume there was no bad intentions. But they only knew what they knew, and then their best interest and your best interest, this is how we do things. You're going to be a lawyer when you grow up. And yet, that internal guidance system in the heart said, I'm going to play the guitar. And all of a sudden, you are accepting a new truth that really isn't your truth, and then carrying it through your life. What is so exciting about this first wave of energy of the two, it knows the difference between who you are. See, you can't be not okay. It's impossible for you to not be okay. And it knows the who you are, and it knows the who you are not. And so one of the things that's happening in this process is you are losing your memories. You are forgetting much of who you are. And it's happening in a really amazing way, as I've been watching this for years. Basically, this wave of light passes through you. And many of those moments that you hold in that unconscious space where you were embarrassed or said something and got laughed at, the universe knows that those have no real value to you. So they're just like rocks in your backpack that you haven't looked at for years and years and years, but they have no value, and you haven't cleaned them out. And so where they have no value and you're not arguing to keep them, the universe, this first wave of light, is passing through you and clearing away all of those memories. Just simply taking them all out of your space. And what makes it so interesting is when those memories are removed, you don't remember that you ever even had them. So you're being cleared of lots and lots of stuff. That's partly how this shift is working and how the wakening up of everybody is happening. You're just simply being unburied from all of the rocks in the backpack. But there are some rocks that we argue for. We have a tendency to argue for our limitations, our own fears, our own beliefs and habits in many ways. And the universe says, no problem. I won't take those away from you if you really like them for your creative process, because I adore you and you have free will as a creator. I won't interfere with anything that you do. And so there are many things that are being taken away, and there are numbers of things, actually very few, but very important to many, that the universe isn't dealing with. At the same time, the second wave of light is passing through, and it is rebuilding you, realigning you, rewiring you, simply reconnecting you, remembering you in such a way that you are starting to know yourself. In that higher multidimensional aspect of you, you are starting to reconnect with you. You're going home. In that process, it's very, very fascinating to watch. But as it all occurs, there is this one little element, those limitations that we each choose to argue for. And as we argue for them, they continue to begin to become more uncomfortable. And so this is the place where people are saying, geez, I'm not sleeping and I've got an upset stomach and I have this worry in my space and I can't clearly identify it. To a great extent, as this new second wave of light begins to pass through you and starts to put you back together in well-being, where you are arguing for your limitations, it's like having a rock in the middle of your awareness. You know, remember that I'm not your funny nose and mental body dis-ease, and then when it drops into the emotional body, the hyphen goes away pretty much, and it just becomes dis-ease. But if you ponder and think, I'm not okay, I'm not okay, I'm not okay, long enough, it will move into a state of density, into physicalness. The hyphen will completely go away, and that concept, that thought, that fear, that worry drops into the physical body as disease. And so that space never starts, your illness never starts in the physical. It starts with that thought that became an electromagnetic field that started out as a little pebble and then grew to a major rock sitting in the middle of your stream. And then the second wave begins to say, I'm going to re-enlighten you. and that electromagnetic field of great well-being starts to flow. And as it flows down that path of the stream, it begins to hit that rock. And I guarantee you one thing, that second wave of light will prevail in this experience. And so you start to get more uncomfortable and more off balance, and the more you dig in your heels, the more the light pushes against it, and eventually you either wake up to the place that says, what am I arguing for this limitation for? And just simply take a breath and it's gone. Or you begin to have some challenges. Those are really the two choices. As this game unfolds, more and more awareness is being brought into the game. And so you're beginning to have access to more and more people who say, wow, I was really stuck in that same place, and this is what I did. And you begin to get more options to let go of those limitations. As you begin to play, this third dimension is going away, and this fourth dimension is really a stepping stone that allows you to begin to step into this fifth dimension. When you begin to play in these higher, lighter, faster vibrations that you many times intellectually know and sometimes have experienced, beauty. Have you ever noticed that beauty and butterflies and the smiles of little babies don't linger with you all day long, but anger or resentment many times does? And so this fourth dimensional space of present time and being able to utilize some tools and skills and enhanced abilities, new awarenesses, begin to let you move through this space without engaging with a lot of the noise that that third dimensional experience is beginning to happen. The noise that you see out and about you, to a great extent, is really quite wonderful. Just take that with a grain of salt, because what is happening is all of the who I am not that we each carry around is beginning to peel away. And it's leaving. It's simply disappearing from who you are. The who you are not is leaving. But as it's happening, it's sometimes something where people get an awareness of it, and they grab a hold of it, and they say, why is my divorce of 20 years coming up now? I thought I was over with that, and begin to argue with it. Many people are feeling these levels of anger and rage and resentment that they have locked away for lots of years, all beginning to come out. Many people around the world have a very limiting construct to move around within. Some of the very fundamental belief systems are very third dimensional, very rigid, unforgiving, very conditional. This is the truth. Very challenging when that new wave of light begins to say, let me show you the beauty that you are. And it begins to prevail within each one of us. And it starts to push all of that anger out, the resentment out, the hate out. The light will prevail, but as we move through this shift, as we begin to come to this point in time called December 21st, 2012, December 12th, 2012, both very significant points, we will hit a point where there will be a trigger mechanism. This is what is coming. This is not a prediction. This is just a statement that says, watch what happens. But it is also a heads up to all that are waking up, because we are stepping into a new chapter in a way. And that's what this Mayan calendar and many of the Hopi prophecies and many of the other indigenous tribes have been saying for many thousands of years. You will come to a point where things will change. Not an ending, not a real great beginning, not a war, not a disaster. Just simply a new day is going to begin to be what you live in. And in order to move through that, you can't take your baggage with you. And so as we go into this next year and the following years, they will come, there will be much more of a collapsing of time. That third dimensional time structure that says, one of the things about it is if you think back to summers when you were growing up. Think back to summers 10 years ago. Remember how long they lasted? There was a length to them. In time, in a linear time structure, you could be angry with somebody and you had a buffer. There was a period of time where you could sit and think about it and change your mind and re-look at it, and maybe it was you, maybe it was them, but you had a buffer before things would happen. You would start thinking about something. It took a long time in many cases for that event or creation to come about. Can you recall that? Now, have you noticed that time seems to be going faster and faster? In actuality, it's not going faster, it's collapsing. You simply have less time available to you to accomplish the same amount of things that you wish to do. And so time is collapsing, and consequently it feels like it's going faster. But one of the significant parts about that is the buffer between what you think and what you create is getting smaller and smaller. And there are a number of aspects of present time. Four, actually. The fourth one is a thing that we will not experience for a little while, but it's where you think, I would like an apple to appear, and you hold out your hand, and there's the apple. Now, I say to people in many of the lectures when I get to that point, how many of you would like that? And almost everybody raises their hand. And I say, well, let me be more specific, and I'll ask you again. What you think is what you will create instantaneously. Now, how many of you want to raise your hand? Because, see, most of us are very sloppy thinkers, and we don't manage our emotions very well, mostly because we've never had to, and mostly because we've been conditioned to think ugly thoughts and noisy thoughts. They had no consequence. But now, if you look around, what you think is beginning to show up a little quicker in your realities. It's really pretty wonderful if you understand that. But if you don't understand that, and you happen to be a person that holds lots of anger and rage and resentment and judgments and bigotry and racisms and sexisms and all of those isms, you're not going to enjoy these next couple of years. You will not enjoy these coming years. And so there are sets of understandings that can be made available, new concepts, new choices that are available, tools that are available. But in this process, all of the who you are not is now peeling away. And when that's understood, and when you can begin to find your own space, see, everything about you, everything that's in your universe is created by you. Everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, you created it. Now people jump up and go, why would I create this divorce, this disease in my kid, my job being lost, my house being taken away? That's crazy. Why would I do that? Crazy, yes. But in fact, because we are sloppy thinkers, and because we don't manage those thoughts that we've stuffed away and the resentments that we hold towards those thoughts that we stuffed away, you know, how many times have you not liked a particular person in your life because they laughed at you or they made you embarrassed? but nobody does anything to you. Remarkably wonderful set of new understandings that comes with it. You see, most of us live outside of ourselves. We live in the past and in the future. When we get into the present moment and start to live that experience, we depend on the outside world to like us, to validate us, to tell us we're okay, and then we can move forward. But when you start to find this space, you realize that the external world is there for your entertainment and for your utilization, meaning that very positively. As you begin to make some awareness about the ability to be in the center of your head, the ability to draw your energy back into your energy field rather than having everything going out, when you can begin to realize that there is a beauty and a smile within that internal guidance system that we've really stepped away from in order to talk to that external world to tell us we're okay. When you can begin to realign yourself into a place where you can observe and choose and act based on this internal compass, the world becomes the theater for your entertainment. The world becomes a place where you can walk through the seams of the noise without becoming the effect of the noise. You know that adage that says, I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. This is this level of consciousness that everybody in the coming days, years, will begin to step into. In that fifth dimensional world, there's an aspect of you that is already a citizen. And it's a citizen that holds certainty and capable and graciousness. It has a command of your presence. None is better than or worse than. And in that fifth dimensional world, you admire and appreciate everyone around you. Words like safety and trust don't even exist in the fifth dimension because there is nothing unsafe and nothing to distrust. And you begin to co-create and admire as a feeling. You begin to build living words that you simply are. Words like graciousness, kindness, certainty, command of your presence are living words. Freedom and ease and accomplishment become things that you smile and experience. So this fifth dimensional experience, very, very different. And yet you've had intellectual thoughts and sometimes even fleeting moments of beauty and laughter. But in that space, it is a every moment present time existence. That fifth dimensional experience is now very present on this planet. Not well populated as yet, but it's as you begin to move into this fourth dimensional space more every moment. And you begin to recognize that many of these things that you engage within the third dimension are nothing but noise. He said, she said, oh, I'm going to agree with him because I don't like her. Pure noise. It's motion that has no value. As you begin to step into this present time space, you're going to begin to realize how noisy we each are, and very quickly begin to shed that noise. And you're going to find that in the process that who you've been friends with for a great period of time in some cases no longer are even interesting to you. Oh, nice people. But what happens is you were in agreement in the noise. Soon as you start to find this maturity, you begin to take responsibility. Better choice is I begin to respond, have the ability to respond, choose, and then act. Everything you know changes. The ease, the ability to start to release much of that energy that has been hidden away, recognizing this has no value to me. Why should I carry embarrassment around and then argue for it or be afraid to let it go? You're going to simply begin to find you can let it go effortlessly. And nobody's going to even notice that you don't hold on to it anymore on one hand, because those that are looking for it, that live in your weaknesses based on your embarrassment, those are no longer in your game plan. They have been stepped away from, not left behind, because they will all wake up also. But many of those that you play in the noise will simply continue to play as you begin to raise your energy up and begin to find more who laugh more often, who smile more often, who enjoy beauty more often. Those are beginning to become more and more common to each one of us. So this shift is a very big deal. It is simply creating a space for more to wake up. And as they wake up, they begin to find some new choices. And it's very simple. However, it may not be easy. And the reason it's not easy is because we argue for those limitations, for those fears that we hang on to. So that's all easing. More and more are waking up at very wonderful levels. More and more are beginning to have skills and tools and abilities, not only to grow themselves, but to be very much in service to others. And see, to a great extent, everybody has a purpose. Most don't recognize it in that third dimension. But your purpose is 100% to grow yourself, to evolve yourself, to ascend. Same word, of your evolution, your growth, your new awarenesses, your ascension, all the same. 100%, that's your job. 100% to accomplish that. 100%. And simultaneously, you have another aspect of purpose, 100% to be of service to others. Where the really magic and the miracle comes into the mix is when you can be 100% in your own light and radiate it outward so all in the house can see you, see opportunity, see beauty and well-being. It's in the same place where both 100% come together in a magnificent radiance. That's what this shift is all about. That was a lot. Let me do this. Let me actually stop right there. And what I'd like to do is take the next 45 minutes and answer your questions, because this is a place where if you have questions, there's answers here, or at least suggestions or places that I will point you. Now, let me do something that I have not been doing for quite some time. Let me take 2 minutes and give you the commercial for this, because one of the things that we do that makes all these pieces so wonderful from my personal space and many thousands of people who've been playing here is there are tools and skills and enhanced abilities that allow you to simply do all these things that I just said. You choose. It's not a sale. I'm not selling you anything. I'm simply telling you there's something here. 12 years ago, approximately, Archangel Michael and Metatron came and said, we believe that there is a pathway that has never ever been walked, that if followed will allow an individual to accelerate their ascension, their evolution, them knowing themselves, and simultaneously will open up a door so wide that all of third dimensional mass consciousness will be able to move into the fifth dimension, have a choice. and they said, would you like to play? And that's not a place you go, well, let me get back to you. And so the answer was, of course. And over the last period of time, there has been a set of tools and skills and enhanced abilities that they have made available. And it's come in the most amazing ways. I thought I was being very clever in designing something. And now, looking back, it was a co-creation. It had nothing to do with me other than as part of that creation. And over this period of time, these great beings have laid out a pathway that now many thousands have walked that is really extraordinary. The ability to define the edges of your aura, to begin to operate within that field, building geometric construction of the octahedron to hold that energy field in place, to allow you to be more or less in your own bubble and observe the world around you. They have constructed, and we are teaching these very simple tools that allow you to step out, kind of level 1 and level 2. So the commercial is, we haven't taught a level 2 class for some time, and in November we're going to do that again. So this first level 1 class, available online, 14 hours of me talking to you directly. Here's a tool, do this, how does it work? So many, many tools, including the ability to create and reactivate that personal power field that you've given up a long time ago. Build the octahedron around you. Raise the vibration of the body to 90% of the speed of light. Actually very simple to do. And begin to know yourself. That leads you into these tools that in level 2 that allow you to start to recognize that every time you close your eyes, you blink your eyes, you go into a whole different brain state and consciousness. Can you learn to maintain one consciousness and be commanding of that, etc.? So the commercial is, if you're interested, go to masteringalchemy.com and ask questions. We'll provide you with as much information. There's tremendous definition of what these tools are. If that's not of interest to you, there are many tools that are free, classes that I've taught that are in those archives. I know I will not see many of you ever, so please go take advantage of these tools, how to use the rose, how to get into the center of your head. Did you know the grounding has 2 components, not just a single line? It has an electrical component and a magnetic component. When turned on, many of those thoughts that bounce around in your head all day long, which are not yours in the first place, simply go away, and you begin to get into present time and choose. So all of that is available. We're going to start a new level 2 class, and end of commercial. If you have questions, ask. So I hope what I just said was useful and of value, and let me turn this over to Roxanne, and she can tell you how we'll do questions, and then please ask, and I'll try to give you an information as best as possible.
Hello, this is Roxanne. Many people have already figured out how to ask the questions, but I'll go over it. What you do is you go into your control panel, and there's a tab that says questions. Click on that, you type your question in the window, and it pops up on my screen, and I can ask it for you. If you ask a question, let us know if you're a level 1, 2, 3 person, so that Jim can answer it a little bit more specifically to you. Okay, Jim, here's a question from Lisbeth in Norway. She says, this rigidity, does it also affect the dreams? I just got weird dreams, mostly about domination, awkward, not my normal dreams.
Yes, it does. This astral space is a whole big lecture all by itself. You know, I said earlier, where does the thought you think go when you're done thinking the thought? Many thoughts that have been thought, not virtually, no, let me restate that. All thoughts that have been thought that have not been brought into an experience are stored in the astral zone. So one of the things that happens, why many times the astral dream space is really kind of weird to many, is because when you go to sleep and you have a set of thoughts in your space, Most people go to sleep and they don't even consider cleaning out their day or collecting the energy that they left all around the place, collect it up. And so when you go to sleep, many people go to sleep, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, what a lousy day I had, I just have to go to sleep. Well, what happens that you don't realize is when you go to sleep in that space, and let's say there is some irritation in your space, a set of thoughts that are specific or angry about, when you go to sleep and you start to pass through that astral space, generally you have this very worn path that you go right to sleep, right through the astral space. You don't dream in the astral space. When you're leaving, we actually do, but you don't remember it because you're going away from yourself. When you dream when you get up in the middle of the night to pee, or when you're coming back into the morning into the body, because that's how you remember. But one of the things that gets strange right now is, those hidden thoughts and emotions that I was just talking about, those unconsciously stored I'm not okays, they're all peeling off you. They're all leaving. But when you go to sleep and you're hanging on to some of those, or they're arguing, or you're angry, or make up your own word, as you go through that astral plane where all the thoughts ever thought that were not manifested. Now let me be very specific. Let me do a really ugly one. So I think the word murder and I commit murder. I have taken a thought, created it in such a way that I brought it into the physical and I get to experience it. You have that fleeting thought about somebody, I wish they were dead, I'd like to kill them, blah, 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 but you don't act on it. My thought manifests as a physicalness. Your thought did not. But although you don't act on it, your thought now goes into the astral to be stored, and it magnetically connects to all the other thoughts ever thought about murdering somebody. So when you go to sleep, there are huge strings of combinations of thoughts that are in that astral plane, some light and airy and beautiful, some really ugly. When you go to sleep and you have a thought that is not your thought but is active because that's where you went to sleep, as you pass through the astral, many times you go into a lot of interaction with that thought. Interesting part is you don't remember that, and that's where it's very intense when you go out. Then you get yourself out of that and you go home. You go back to the etheric range. Every night you go home. Then if you're still hanging on to it, generally when you come back into the body and you pass through that astral zone again, that's where you have the dream that you recall. And so one of the key things about what's going on right now is many of the thoughts you're not even conscious of that you thought when you were 3 years old, 7 years old, 18 years old, the who you are not is now all peeling off. And when you go to sleep many times and you haven't cleaned out that space, you pass through that astral zone and you begin to engage with your thought and all the other thoughts ever thought. There's much more to this, but that's the simple version. Many of you also are working very aggressively in that astral plane to clear the astral plane. You see, the astral plane is the emotional body of the earth. And all those thoughts, wars, rape, incest, murder, domination, slavery, very heavy, weighing on the earth. And so many of you are earth healers. You go in every night, you help, you clean up, and sometimes you come back exhausted or having some distortions in terms of your mental thought processes. So multiple reasons why that kind of thing happens. But the last one I'll tell you is one of the things that is occurring right now is you are unwinding from lots of your experiences. That's why you'll have a dream and you'll be looking at somebody you know, like your mother, and you'll be calling her by a different name. You're making separations from some of the energies that sit within your space. You see, many of the thoughts that you think And many of the beliefs that you hold are not yours. They never were yours. But yet they construct and condition who we are. And those are the kind of thoughts that you're beginning to clear up in that astral plane and make many changes. So that's the short version of a really wonderful story about the astral, but that's a story for another day. Roxanne.
Okay, here is a question from Faye. Could you please elaborate on the, quote, trigger mechanisms that you just spoke about tonight? I need to get a grip on what you meant.
Trigger mechanisms in what regard? Sorry, you have more information?
That's the sentence I have here. Trigger.
So Faye, expand on that. Send her a note, expand on that, because I'm not recalling where the reference was. And then let's have Roxanne can ask it again. Do you have another question?
Yes, I do. This is from Judy. I'm in level 1. Can all things in the past be altered or changed? I listened to your conversation with Greg Braden on the Awakening Zone, and you both referenced the past as facts, ice samples. Seems you both believe that this past happened and is the truth.
Well, there are many aspects of past. And so let's, one of the things we have is a history. But let me take that word and put it in a different perspective and see if we can answer your question. Everything about you is in the present moment. You are always in the present moment. Your body cannot be in the past or the future, in simple terms. And what happens is I'm in this moment, and now I'm in this moment, and now I'm in this moment. The first moment is already in the past. One of the things that occurs to you, and this hopefully will be very valuable, if you understand this, this is huge, is where people get very consumed is you can have a past experience, but you cannot have a past emotion. So let me put it in this context. So I see you and I say, hello, how are you? And you say, oh, I'm good. Well, somehow I'm good and oh, I'm good don't match up. And I say, well, what's going on? And you say, my husband died 20 years ago, and I'm very sad and upset about it. What happens is the history of your past is my husband died 20 years ago. The emotion is always a present time experience. So you're not sad 20 years ago, you are sad right now. And so what I mean by that is, yes, in that present time moment when your husband died 20 years ago, you had a emotional structure called sad. Keep it simple. Now, 20 years later, because you put your finger back into that history and you basically choose to relive the history, the emotion is in the moment that you experience. So yes, I'm sad, but sad is an emotion you're having right now that is attached to a history. If you can begin to recognize that the emotion is a present time experience, and this is where a lot of these tools become so valuable, is where are you holding your, so I say to you, oh, I'm sorry that you're sad, and that must be challenging. But how was that party you went to last night? Oh, that was really great. You say, I had so much fun. Well, how did you just do that? How did you shift from sad as a present time emotion to enthusiasm as a present time emotion? And as soon as you shifted it to enthusiasm, the history, my husband died 20 years ago, is still very valid, except I'm not in the experience of the emotion that I tie to that experience of my husband dying 20 years ago. So when you can begin to recognize that I choose my emotion and I am in present time, my past becomes simply a history to choose from, to determine how I would like to use this piece of information to go forward into my next future moment. You create your future from the present, but you cannot live in the, you can't change the past in the past, nor can you create the future in the future. But in the moment, you can recreate your past entirely, and you can build a future that you choose. And when I say you can recreate your past, one of the things that if you and I went to your darkest secret and you say, absolutely, this happened, they laughed at me, I was embarrassed and humiliated, etc., and this was the worst thing that ever happened to me. How many, and I can take you back to that, and you and I agree, well, let's go back and look at that. And we walk around that event one time. By the time we get back to the starting point, the event did not happen as you believe it happened. How many times have you had an experience with old friends and you say, remember the time we did such and such, and they go, it didn't happen that way. And then they start telling you their point of view, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, they're right. That person was there and this occurred and blah, blah, blah. And so when you begin to get into this present time moment and you begin to become very conscious that your emotions can be shifted any second, you can choose the emotion and you can choose the thought, you've just empowered yourself to an enormous level. Your history is not a series of events that are predestined to repeat themselves. If you can simply get into the present moment, your history is a set of events to choose from to determine how you take your next step. So in the case of the conversation with Greg Braden we had the other day, which is available on the website also, Greg said that scientists from all over the world got together in spite of the politics of their countries, and they created a group agreement that said we were going to look at the ice layers, which turned out to be 460,000 years of ice layers. And in each one of the ice layers, they were able to determine, now with the technologies available, what happened in the atmosphere in each one of those years. And so they were able to create a very clear story about how large cycles of climate has occurred on the Earth. And so I can also take you to a different story. But what happens here is that story is believable because you can more or less touch it and feel the scientists and see their work and look at their research. But if I told you about the many civilizations that have occurred on this planet, that there's no record in terms of how you understand record, you would simply either doubt me or think I was crazy or go, wow, that was a pretty cool story. But there would be no validation to the story. And yet, it would be equally as true. So, it's not that there's made-up stories. There are just different choices to look at how the events occurred and all of the variables that you wish to choose to look at. I hope that is helpful.
Jim, here's a question from Joanne. Is all of this unhappiness all over the world part of this massive shift?
Yes, very much. So just keep it in simple terms. Everybody is a wonderful person at their base. Everybody came here at this period of time to experience themselves because there's a big change that's about to occur. And everybody has a lot of baggage collected from past lives, all kinds of things that people say, I want to get past this. Everybody is a wonderful spiritual being, and everybody does not have the same level of knowledge or experience or understanding of how to manage the energy and the energy fields that they're living in. So it's just like looking at little kids. And a little kid that's 4 years old simply doesn't have the capacity of the nuclear physicist that's 80 years old. Well, wrong word. It may have the capacity, but it hasn't moved into those ranges of its awareness as yet. And so it's the same way all over the world. And many people are very much right now clearing out the violence, the hate, the rage, the suppression, the depressions that they've experienced in this lifetime. Many have been dominated by, enslaved by dictatorial powers around the world. And many of us have been enslaved by economic powers around the world. What happens is we're all beginning to shed those clothes. What you're seeing in the world, and let me be very clear, what you will see in the next 3 to 4 years very specifically is the shedding of these clothes. So we have been building this shift into a point where the experience drops into the physical world. It has been built in the spiritual space, in the emotional space, in the mental space, and it is about to drop into the physical space. And it will be cleared, and you're going to see very horrific things and very astonishingly beautiful things. And there's another piece to this. Let me say it very simply. It is also going to be, hear this word separation lightly. I don't mean separation in the big terms. You're going to begin to find that many things go on in the world and you are very distant from them. They are other people's creations that they're working through. They're not yours. And so it's like, in a way, watching television and then turning the television off. But it's going to be even more pronounced. And you're going to start to find that it gets more like reading the newspaper and then putting it down and going about your adventure. It's not about not caring. It simply is many of those stratas are going to begin to be not in your awareness any longer. In the hologram that the game is constructed, you are the creator of your portion of the puzzle piece. And you're going to start to find that as we move through this game, it's you've been the caterpillar, you're about to become the butterfly. But if you cut open the chrysalis in the transition where we are currently in, all you see is mush. You don't see the caterpillar or the butterfly. In fact, you see nothing that resembles either one. We're in that transition period. And many are going to begin to choose and start to have manifested realities that are conscious and chosen. And the more those higher, faster vibrations are chosen, the more knowledge and awareness comes with those higher, faster vibrations. And there's a place where and I'm watching this happen, where your ability to literally change, and most of you will not hear this, your ability to literally change the physical body into light and stay very, very conscious and walk around in a body that looks very physical, that even feels very physical in many ways. It simply will not be at that same kind of experience you have. Each cell will begin to be perfectly tuned to each other cell. Words like disease and hunger just will not exist. But it's part of this great adventure with Metatron is this path is about, can you build a construction of consciousness in the physical that has never been constructed before? And the answer is yes. Very exciting what we are about to experience and see. Rox.
Here's a question from Jerry. I have experienced being taught intuitively since early childhood. Your work has helped me put all the pieces together. However, I have a question. How does homosexuality fit in with ascension?
Perfectly. See, look, everybody is a creator of themselves. And everybody has a puzzle piece to experience. And between lifetimes, in simple terms, you get to look at all the things you've done and say, how can I expand upon this? How can I add to my adventure? How can I begin to find balance? Very big word. Because here I punched somebody in the nose, and over there I was punched in the nose, and I still hold this resentment, and I would like to get out of the resentment.
So you build it in as part of the lesson, and you simply begin to experience yourself maybe around people who punch each other in the nose, but you don't do that. And you all of a sudden start to realize this is not a useful way to experience yourself, and you balance your lesson. And so homosexuality is simply an expression that is very natural. You know, if you listen to the conversation with Greg Braden the other day, he was talking about some of the great myths of this experience we're currently having. And one of the primary myths was Charles Darwin and how the fittest is the nature of the game. But as you begin to look at how nature actually works, it is astonishing how this concept of homosexuality is in all species. Well, I don't know about all species, but many, many of the species. It's a natural state of being. But once you start putting religion and judgments and prejudices and this is the truth and that's not the truth and we do it this way, we don't do it that way, and we hang out with these people, but we definitely don't go by those people, can you see the rigidity that gets placed into the structure? In real terms, if that is your natural state of inclination, it's a natural state of inclination. There is much more to homosexuality and bisexuality than meets the eye. It has a tremendous amount to do with a geometric alignment called the star tetrahedron, which is very much a construct in and about and around you, very dormant, inactive. But how that energy is aligned, you align it, and some choose to come into a body that's masculine and have very feminine characteristics because that's their nature of beauty and ease and well-being. And others come into a female body and have a sense of building houses and hammering nails and being very intense in how they work. But if you didn't know the word homosexuality or any of the beliefs that are created with it, how would you experience each of these people? Very naturally. You wouldn't even question it. But because of the constructs of the right and the wrong and the good and the bad and the should and the shouldn't and the belief system of the religions and the mom, dad, teacher, minister who got them from their mom, dad, teacher, and minister, we have a very big judgment. But isn't it amazing that people are standing up and saying, this is who I am? And over years, they have been coming out, and they've been proud of it. It's really quite a remarkable state of courage that is giving many others the ability to simply say, yeah, so what? And you're going to see that remarkable state of courage begin to be demonstrated in each one of us. Not around homosexuality or sexuality at all, but in this is who I am. I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to play the guitar. I'm happy. See, it's all about being happy and beginning to understand the creative aspect. And when you start to understand how the emotional body and the mental body were meant to work, they never were meant to be two separate bodies. And you will find in lots of the choices you will have in the near future is how to merge that mental and emotional body into one, and how to start to use the power of emotions to generate feelings of great beauty. It's a creative process that we have forgotten. But once you get into the flow of how to direct your power through an emotion into an explosive, creative concept, and then live the beauty that you create every moment, that's the fifth dimension and the sixth. And that's what you are having in front of you at this moment to experience. Thanks for that question.
Tim, I have a comment here from Chuck in our Level 3 Live in Nevada City. He's saying, Jim, thank you for the most concise and clear information. It's refreshing.
Thanks, Chuck. Nice to hear from you. I've been thinking about you.
Here's a question from Korn Karn in Thailand. How does one clean the thoughts out before you go to bed?
Well, here, let me give you a very easy process. And it's one of these tools. So when I say tools are simple, that's what I really mean. So if I said to you all, can you imagine a red rose? Now, generally, as soon as I say that, let me even expand on it. A red rose that is open and it's beautiful and has little drops of water on it in the morning, and it has 2 leaves coming out of a beautiful green stem. How many of you see the picture? See, that's your clairvoyance being engaged. And everybody has that. And you come into the body with that. But to answer the question, take that red rose, and it's almost like put it between your thumb and your index finger. Just kind of reach out in front of you and grab that image, and then set it right in front of you as if it was a real red rose in physical terms. Just kind of set it right in front of your face, out, 30 centimeters or 15 inches. What you simply do is, this is a very powerful symbol for lots of reasons that I don't need to explain here. It has the capacity to override slower, duller thoughts and energy patterns. It's vibrant, it's alive, it has a huge amount of energy in it, this simple concept in this symbol. Just put that rose out in front of you and you do 2 things. First, you simply say, who got in my space today? And so let's play this game right now. Simply hold it there, and the question is, who's the first person that got into your space today? Now, there's no bad people, so we're not looking for how dare they, but what's the first name that comes up? Just trust that. And would you have the rose collect that person's energy? And very simply, if you wish, you could explode that rose just like it was a fireworks and send the energy back to the person. Or you can do it a simpler way also, and that's a very useful one because you begin to be conscious of what's going on. But in this context, have the rose collect up all the energy that got in your space. You sit on the edge of your bed before you lay down and go to sleep, and simply say, collect up all the energy that got in my space, and just kind of watch the rose. You'll have thoughts of people. You'll have memories of sitting in your car at a stop sign. You'll have a sense of walking the aisle in the grocery store that you did at 10 o'clock in the morning. None of it right or wrong or even significant. The rose is simply collecting up all the energy of others. And then when it says, I'm done, and it will say that very quickly, you'll just have this sense of, good, I'm complete. Explode the rose, give back all the energy to them that is theirs, and then create a second rose. Same red rose. And simply say, where have I left myself? And you'll find that you were staring at the can of peas, at the stop sign possibly, or in a conversation, or thinking about a set of thoughts. You leave yourself there. It's like leaving your money all around town, and then there's a big sale at the fashion mall and you don't have any money anymore. Collect it all up. And so just collect you up, and when it's all collected up, explode the rose, let it all come back to you, take a nice breath, and then the next thing that you want to do is have a wonderful thought. Now, one of the things I tell people to do is when you go to sleep, you have the capacity of choosing in all that is where to go, but you don't know that. So it's very simple. There is a set of gardens, the most beautiful gardens you could possibly imagine, where the angels experience themselves also. It's kind of a common shared reality. And so when you go to sleep, if you just simply say, well, I think I'd like to go and visit the garden. Now, you don't lose the thought there. You lay down and you begin to think about, if there was a beautiful garden, what would it look like? And begin to hold your attention in the garden. See the flowers, walk the path, see the streams, watch the unicorns, enjoy the dragonflies, look around the next corner and find the most beautiful waterfall. Enjoy the adventure, you'll fall asleep. Once you start playing that and have a decision to come back from this sleep space through the garden, you will start having memories of this garden. It takes a little while. It doesn't happen immediately. But just how does that feel to you? Just notice the feeling and think about what that would be like if you went to sleep in that space every night versus, damn, it was a bad day. I had so much trouble. My boss is a jerk, etc. Change your vibration and you will change your reality. Change your frequency of thoughts from something that's heavy to something that's light, and you will change this reality that you play in. Hope that's helpful. These are great questions.
Yeah, and there's a lot of these great questions, so I want to apologize ahead of time because I know I'm not going to get to all of these. It's a lot. We'd be here for the next 2 days.
Okay.
No. Here's a question from Deanna, who's in Pathways. I've had some very surprising experiences of having actually more time. In other words, the clock hasn't moved for half an hour or an hour while I'm busy doing something. I thought we were supposed to be losing time.
Oh, perfect. Great question. So one of the things that's happening, I said, time is an application. And many of you are figuring that out, whether you're being conscious of it or not. And so as you begin to get, two things happen. As you begin to clear away the who you are not, as you begin to stop engaging in the noise, stop putting your finger in the same light socket and believing the message was repeat as often as possible. That was never the message, it's just how you heard it. As you begin to make your separations, your discernment in what is what you wish to play in and discern what is not what you wish to play in, some very interesting things happen. First, the noise starts to go away. And you begin to find that you're not engaging in it as much. Interestingly, as you get out of the noise, you begin to have a lot of time on your hands because you're no longer engaged with the noise, the motion that is just relentless. In that space, and this is partly where you're asking the question, time begins to be very much in your awareness. The next piece is you will begin to lose time again as you start to begin to be the creator. You start to say, well, I'd like to do this. I'm not engaged with the noise, but I would like to have these experiences. Time will again go in such a way that how many of you have a sense that you get up in the morning and almost it's like what happened to the day, you're falling back in bed. And so that's the compression of time. But as you begin to get more and more into your creations and you start to be the creator from an internal space, it almost doesn't matter whether day and night occur. You just simply are in this creative mode. One of the things that is just amazing to me is we just spent a week teaching in Europe, had a wonderful time there, and right now it could have been 5 years ago. I have no relationship to, oh, that was just Monday. There is no Monday in my reality anymore. It's I'm now here, and now I'm here, and now I'm here. It's an amazing experience, but when you begin to put your creative energies into the moment, you just simply start to manifest and create, and it's as if you're just walking on this spiraling staircase. There's never any start or finish. You begin to have moments of great enthusiasm and joy every moment. And the last moment was wonderful, but now we're in this moment. Sometimes the moments carry from one moment to the other in your creative process. So it's not a pure answer because there's so much to it. And I'm just kind of giving you a story here tonight. But some of you will experience much of what I'm saying, and others of you will not have those same experiences. Some grew up in households where they were not okay. Others grew up in households where they were loved and cherished and nurtured and raised, and it was the most wonderful experience that you've ever had. In both cases, there are still patterns that you hold on to, beliefs and thoughts that you hold on to that still are not yours. And so there's no good or bad or no right or wrong. There is just what is. So in the what is, how do you choose to experience yourself becomes the only question there is. Which feeling feels better, and how do you put your attention in that feeling? It's really very simple, but to a great extent in that third dimension, we're like a freight train at 90 miles an hour, and I'm sitting here going, oh, turn right. And you're going, are you nuts? We'll crash. I said, yeah, I know. Just turn right. And eventually you turn right, and what happens when you turn right is you say, why didn't you tell me that sooner? And everybody in the room laughs. And you laugh too, because that's where you're about to go. Turn right.
Tim, here's a question from Ida in Florida. What is the best tool for removing disenchantment? I'm having trouble removing this feeling, and I've used all the tools I can think of.
So I'm assuming you are playing in this Mastering Alchemy program. It was just talk in terms of tools.
Yep, she is.
Would you know what level?
I think she's in level 2.
Okay, so there is an aspect of information around the 4th, 5th, and 6th rays, and you should be now in level 2 well through that. And so one of the things you begin to look at is how are you holding that, and use that 4th ray to begin to disassemble it and bring it up into the 5th ray and see what parts are of value and what parts you don't want, and give them back to the library in the great universe, and then how would you like to substitute for it? Very simple mechanism. But one of the things you also want to look at is if I can't get rid of it, that just tells you that I have a lot of electromagnetic charge to this. There's a set of beliefs in it. And maybe even those beliefs aren't even yours. So, you know, very simple. Start to use the rose. Clean out that. You're about to find in the 8th ray work, which is coming up for many of you soon, is a whole new set of mechanisms to be able to clear these thoughts very simply. But in order to get there, there's a whole bunch of foundational work in that 4th, 5th, 6th ray and in the rose and the tools that you've already learned. So there is no the tool, but you have a very wide tool bench or tools in your toolbox right now. Just begin to play with them and allow it to start to just dissipate without holding on to it.
Jim, I have 3 or 4 people asking a similar question. It has to do with how to help or allow those people who are not awake as we go through.
Well, this is a great question, and it's also a simple answer, and it's an answer that many don't want to hear. Now, and especially, I just said, service to others is one of your primary purposes. But one of the things that happens in the 3rd dimension is you start to play in words like empathy and sympathy. And many of us decide it's very important to fix those others. But the real answer is, healer, heal thyself. See, until you can like yourself, give to yourself, be the dynamics that I'm talking about here, all of your healing is really very useless. One of the things about healing others, the first thing that good healers will figure out is, I do nothing. I don't fix them. I don't do anything. Good healers simply have a sense of themselves and vibrational patterns that when you are in the presence of another, when you begin to live in front of them beauty and well-being and balance and capable, certain, being senior in your body, not as in old, but as in this is who I am. When you start to hold a level of light in the body and ease, and you stand in front of someone who is not there, and you say, hello, nice to see you. They can go, get away, I don't want to be around you, and many will. And you say, yes, I know, but how about just having lunch today? And you do nothing but simply be happy. They will begin to match you. Just like that rose vibrates at a very high frequency rate, and everything that is duller and misbalanced around it will begin to be brought up to the level of that rose or neutralized. So as a healer, as giving to others, the most important thing I think I can tell you is love yourself, like yourself, be pleased with yourself, be happy in yourself, and simply hold it in such a radiation of light that it's that adage, put your light on the candlestick so all in the house can see. And what you will learn somewhere down the line is not only are you the light, but you are the candlestick. It's in that presence of yourself, in the presence of others, that you begin to be so magnetic that they naturally heal. You know, there's an adage in the Bible where Jesus is supposed to have said, "Who touched my cloak?" What happened is it wasn't who touched my cloak. It's he turned around and found a woman who matched his elevated state of consciousness and was able to say, "Who is that?" And there she was. It had nothing to do with the physicalness of his garment. It was he held such a level of conscious, radiant light, and she said, "I want that," and matched it and was healed. Because in that level of beauty and grace and well-being that you have the capacity to demonstrate this instant, everybody will begin to be healed because they can't hold their attention in, "I'm not okay." They begin to see well-being. And if you want to be a healer, that's what a healer does. And when you begin to really know how to be a healer, it's amazing how you simply touch and heal many, and they don't even know what happened. They have no recollection of who gave them this opportunity for a job or put a hamburger in front of them when they were hungry. They never even thank you. And you'll smile as you walk with them. That's what you're in the process of becoming. That's a fifth dimensional being that begins to live their own growth and their service to others in that 100% of magic. And you will experience that in this lifetime, every single one of you. Mostly. That capacity is available. Some, even hearing these words, will choose to hold on to their limitations, and they will choose to step out of the body because it's easier than trying to unravel themselves. And if you look around the world right now, you are seeing, without knowing it, more people leaving the body right now in huge numbers, but are unseen. And that will continue to happen. Going into 2013, 14, and 15, it will begin to be apparent that how many people are leaving the body. And it's not a bad thing. Death is not what you have been told it is. It's really simply a very simple act to step out of the body. And it's actually very painless in most cases. It's when you are still arguing for being in the body in the car accident, that's where we all see the pain. But stepping out of the body is an easy thing to do. And many will, because many are saying, "I want what you're talking about, but I'm so entangled in he said, she said, in my third dimensional noise that I can't unravel myself. So I'm going to step out of the body and go to the finish line and root you all home, because everybody is going home, whether they leave the body as in the method that we know, dying, or you simply begin to become a living light that you change, transform the body, the mental body, the emotional body, into this fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional field of light that simply never dies. That is available right now. Few will choose it, and more will follow. And then it will begin to be a way of life in years down the road.
Okay, Jim, we are past time.
Well, we're always past time. But there is no time. So we're
simultaneous. So here's one last question. This is from Alex. How do we know and or recognize the limitations we have?
Very, very simple. Which thought feels better? The one you're in or the one that you would like to be in? You know, it's like, I hate my job, I hate my job, I really want to be over there on the beach. And you can want to be over there on the beach all you want, but when you sit in I hate my job, as a simple analogy, that's the energy you're drawing to yourself. We didn't talk about the law of attraction, but the law of attraction is flawless, absolutely flawless. And it simply says, what you put your attention on, I, the universe who adores you, will provide for you. And because you have free will, I will not second guess or change any of your creative strategy or creation. So when we hold more attention in our backpack, in those rocks, I'm not okay, I don't deserve, I'm not attractive, and we hold more attention in there, the universe wakes up in the morning with you, and you simply are in this vibration that says, oh, it's going to be a great day. I'm a terrible person, nobody likes me, and I'm never going to succeed. There's more charge in the attention point of, I'm not okay. And the universe smiles and says, whoa, this is a great creation that Larry has put together here. And I simply am going to give him more of the same today because he loves this game. Let's see if we can create this opportunity. And as you begin to shift your awareness, clean your space before you go to bed, wake up and simply say the first thought in your mind is, this is going to be a great day. And say it with an emotion. Don't try to figure out whether it's going to be a great day. Just create it in that vibration. All of a sudden, the rock pile in the backpack begins to be lesser and lesser because the universe is on your side. And then eventually you start to find that you begin to experience a different set of experiences. And that beach is something that you can begin to wish to be on and simply say, well, here I am. So I'm going to pretend I'm on the beach and start to think about all the wonderfulness that you're walking through in your day while you do the labor that you're doing. And you put more attention on the feeling good space, the thought that feels better, and all of a sudden, interestingly enough, you get fired and you go, this is terrible, and the next day you get an invitation to go to the beach. So you create the reality in very funny ways sometimes, but sometimes you create the space to get out of what you're in order to allow you to begin to create what becomes available. And that's going to happen faster and faster because that time buffer is getting smaller and smaller. What you think is what you'll start to create. But hear that very clearly because more and more is peeling off. And if you keep grabbing a hold of it and then saying, why are you here again? It'll tell you why you're here. In all the emotions and thoughts and entanglements that you had with your divorce 20 years ago that you thought was all gone, it'll tell you. Well, remember how bad she was, he was, and what they said, and how dare them. Which thought feels better? The one that says, wow, it's leaving, and let it go, or the one that says, what a bitch. I'm going to argue with her, him, she, them. And you will for a long time until you decide which thought feels better. And then how will you choose is the only question on the table. So let me stop right there. I hope this is of value. I'm just stunned that not many people have left. But this is what you are now beginning to experience. It's going to get more dynamic and more exciting and more challenging in many ways. But which thought feels better, and how do you begin to choose? Use those little tools that I just gave you. That rose, simple, funny, it's like, how can that be so significant? I guarantee you it'll change your reality if you'll play with it for a little while. There are many other tools that are equally as simple, and when integrated into your structure and begin to be used, you're going to find you have less engagement with the noise, less entanglement with the thoughts, and more awareness of well-being as this shift passes through the year, the ending time in the ending month, meaning December, not an ending time, but passes through December, and a whole new day will begin to be presented. At the beginning, it may be obvious to some and very much unobvious to others. Many will wake up on December 22nd and say, oh, what was that all about? It was always another one of those hoaxes. There was no thing that happened. But guarantee, I tell you, something will happen, and you will begin to watch it unfold in the most remarkable of ways as we go through the next few years. So choose well, enjoy yourself, be pleased with yourself, and allow that to be the internal clock, internal guidance system that drives your going forward. So next month, I'm going to do 2 of these. I'm going to talk more specifically about tools in both of them, because I know I'm not going to know you or see you or ever have you in any kind of these classes. And it's more important that you begin to have tools to choose from, even though you'll never take a class. So the next 2 sessions in October are going to be all about tools that are related to level 1 and level 2 in order to get you more prepared for this shift in December. So with that, let me come to a stop. Thank you for playing.